Good afternoon. On behalf of NewCities, it's my honor and pleasure to introduce our closing keynote speaker of New Housing Solutions Live, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar of Minnesota. In November of last year, Ms. Omar introduced the Homes for All Act, her bold vision to commit more than $1 trillion toward the construction of 12 million new units of public housing over a decade, easily the most ambitious congressional housing proposal in a generation. Over the last 3 days, we've convened activists, architects, economists, policy experts, and elected officials to chart a path forward after the COVID-19 pandemic, which threatens to evict tens of millions of Americans at precisely the moment housing has been irrefutably proven to be a human right. Ms. Omar's vision is a step closer to reality after the House of Representatives recently voted to repeal the Fair Cloth Amendment as part of the Moving Forward Act, helping to restore new public housing as a tool for solving America's housing crisis. To conclude the public program of New Housing Solutions, it's my pleasure to introduce Congresswoman Ilhan Omar.
Thank you, Greg, and thank you to everyone for joining us today. As I always say, housing provides security, housing provides stability, and housing is a human right. When I first came to this country as a refugee, I was horrified by the amount of people experiencing homelessness on the streets. I remember turning to my father and saying to him, "This doesn't look like the America you promised." And my father said, "Hush, child, we are going to get to our America." The America I dreamed about guaranteed equal protection under the law and provided everyone the opportunity to live with dignity and thrive. 2 decades later, I'm still fighting for that America. Seeing people sleep on the sidewalks should not be the norm anywhere. But sadly, in one of the wealthiest countries in the history of the world, it still is. In my state of Minnesota, over 10,000 people faced homelessness last year. 6,000 of them were children. In North Minneapolis, nearly half of all renters have experienced eviction within the last 3 years. That's just in Minnesota. Across the country, millions of people are struggling to afford to put roof over their head, and over 500,000 people experience homelessness on a given night. Over a quarter of them are children. Thousands are living in temporary shelters or transitional housing. More are caught in a perpetual cycle of housing insecurity. As the economy dovetails into recession during the current coronavirus crisis, those numbers are expected to increase even more. Our current free market housing system is failing the needs of poor and working class. At the beginning of the corona pandemic, I saw a photo from a homeless shelter in Los Angeles, where homeless folks were sleeping in a parking lot where thousands of hotel rooms stayed vacant. This inhumane shelter exemplifies greed and complacency. This is why I introduced the Rent and Mortgage Cancellation Act this year to permanently cancel all payments on rental homes and mortgages until the end of the pandemic. Additionally, all home mortgage payments would be suspended under this legislation, with mortgage holders having the ability to have eligibility for a similar program. These programs would be operated by HUD. My bill would fully be funded by the federal government, because at times of great crises, we must guarantee Americans the right to be housed and have roof over their heads. But the truth is the housing crisis didn't begin with the COVID crisis. Families have long been struggling with homelessness and housing insecurity. The pandemic has only exacerbated the deep disparities within our housing system. There is a better way forward. We can invest in housing on a larger scale, not seen since the New Deal. If we as a nation have the moral courage to make housing a fundamental human right, then our entire society would be better off. That's why last year I introduced the Homes for All Act, which is a long-term vision for solving housing insecurity in this country. The legislation authorizes construction of 12 million new public housing and private affordable units. It also protects families from gentrification, prevents displacement, and stabilizes neighborhoods. The purpose of the legislation is to finally invest in housing with the same vigor not seen since FDR's New Deal. It also makes public housing a mandatory part of the federal budget. Just like Medicare and Social Security, investing in public housing will expand the available affordable housing stock, which will drive down costs throughout the market. As many people are displaced by climate crises, we also need to build housing units with the highest environmental standards available. Under the Homes for All, public housing will be designed, built, and operated with the highest standards to ensure the safety of all tenants. Decarbonized housing will allow all people, regardless of zip code, the ability to thrive and will be a core part of the Green New Deal. The next inevitable question is, how will we pay for it? It's simple. Shift our priorities as a nation to give billionaires and corporations a huge task break. We can house our homelessness. This is just resetting our priorities. If we can spend trillions of dollars to fund endless wars, we can provide an avenue for poor and middle class to purchase a home. Allocating money to provide housing for all is an investment that will have a ripple effect throughout our country. This investment will employ thousands by providing good paying jobs, healthcare, and well-being of thousands of our families. The large-scale investment will drastically change the outcome and trajectory of millions of lives. And most importantly, it will drastically reduce homelessness by guaranteeing a home for millions who currently lack one. I just came back from one of the encampments that are set up at our parks here in Minneapolis. And to look at the kind of investment we make in our policing or in our military, and to not urgently act to house children, veterans, and families who are living literally in tents, and not address the issue as we push other countries to address the needs of their internally displaced people, is just morally wrong, and we can do better as a nation. Times of tremendous moral challenge also present us with tremendous opportunities. We have an opportunity to create the America I, and so many of our families have dreamed about. Let us act on our shared values and guarantee housing as a human right once and for all. So thank you all for having me, and thank you for all of you for being a champion in this fight to guarantee housing for all.